My mother gave away my boarding pass to the daughter who hadn't spoken to her in 3 years. And she did it with a smile, like I should thank her for the favor. She plucked it straight from my hand. No warning. No apology. Just that brittle, church lady tone she used whenever she did something cruel in the name of grace. Sabrina held the boarding pass and stepped forward slowly, like someone called on stage who wasn't sure she deserved it. She looked thinner than I remembered.
Tan.
Expensive. The kind of expensive meant to look effortless. Linen blouse, glassy lips, hair in those artfully undone waves Instagram loves. I stood there. Gate 42, Amalfi Coast departure blinking above me, in tailored cream slacks, a silk blouse the color of stormy sky, and soft leather flats that had walked me through every chapter of my independence. My son, Oliver, clutched my wrist with one small hand. "Mama," he whispered. I didn't answer. I was too busy calculating what had just happened. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't spontaneous generosity. It was surgical. I planned the trip, paid for the suite, arranged the private chef and the villa perched above the coast. The same photo my mother once tore from a travel magazine and pasted on the fridge like a silent wish. It was supposed to be her 60th birthday gift. Her dream. Our memory. But apparently, dreams could be reassigned. The gate agent called final boarding. Sabrina brushed a caramel curl behind her ear and stepped forward, ticket in hand, still warm from my palm. My mother followed her, hand light on her back, like she was guiding royalty down the aisle. They didn't look back. Just like that, I became an afterthought to the very thing I built. The car ride home was quiet. Oliver fell asleep somewhere along the I-405, one sneaker untied, soft snores syncing with the hum of tires. I kept both hands on the wheel and my jaw clenched, replaying the moment on a cruel loop, like if I rewound it just right, I could stop her hand before she took what was mine. But betrayal doesn't blur. It etches. At home, I sat at the kitchen table and laid out the itinerary. Amalfi Coast. 5 nights in a whitewashed cliffside villa. Infinity pool. Lemon groves. Chef-prepared meals under candlelight. The kind of place where people rediscover joy. Where I thought she might rediscover me. It had taken me 6 months to save. Late nights at the firm. Skipped birthday dinners. No splurges. All the little joys people allow themselves. I'd traded them for this. And for what? So Sabrina could swoop back in like the prodigal daughter and be handed the crown I'd carried, polished, and worn for years?
No.
Not this time. I picked up a pen and scrawled across the itinerary. Never again. Sabrina hadn't shown up for Mom's surgery. She missed Christmas, birthdays, even Oliver's school play, where he played a sunflower and beamed from the stage. Every absence was explained away with a sigh and an excuse. She's just sensitive. You know how Sabrina is. Yeah, I knew. She was chaos wrapped in charm. She cried pretty, lied easily, left wreckage and got applause for it. I cleaned it all up. And once, just once, got a thank you card. Blank inside. 3 days later, a photo dropped into the family group chat. Mom and Sabrina on the stone steps of a coastal taverna, arms around each other, Prosecco in hand, laughing like nothing had ever been broken. Sabrina wore my sunglasses. Mom wore the linen wrap I gave her last Christmas, the one she said made her look washed out. The caption read, Amalfi heals everything blue heart #60 and thriving. I didn't reply. I didn't save the photo. Instead, I took Oliver to the beach. Not the Instagram beach. The wind-torn, seaweed-scattered one where truth didn't have to dress up. We sat with juice boxes and tuna sandwiches and let the waves crash like they meant it. Oliver picked at his crust. Wasn't the trip for Grandma's birthday? It was, I said. So, why'd she give it to Aunt Sabrina? Because Sabrina makes her feel needed, I said. And I make her feel guilty. Oliver blinked. That's not fair. No, I said, wrapping an arm around him. But it's clear. That night, I pulled out the hand-stitched leather journal I'd bought for Mom, meant to gift it on the trip. Inside the cover, I'd written, You gave the world to others your whole life. I just wanted to give some of it back to you. I tore the page out and burned it in a pasta pot on the porch. Oliver watched through the sliding door. I let him see what grief looks like. Quiet, but scorching. Monday morning. I arrived at the office early. No coffee. No makeup. Just presents. The partner barked from his office, without looking up. Melissa, Simmons' alimony file. It's urgent. I stepped into the doorway. That's not my file. I'm on the Carter deposition. He looked up. I didn't flinch, because sometimes silence lands harder than rage, and clarity sounds like defiance. A few days later, the doorbell rang one evening. Oliver was playing with Legos, clicking them together into something that looks half spaceship, half submarine. I opened the door barefoot, expecting a neighbor. It was a courier. Cream envelope. Gold seal. A dinner invitation. Mom and Sabrina's welcome back celebration. At the bottom, beneath the RSVP. Special announcement to follow. I stared at it for a long time, then opened my planner, turned to Saturday, and wrote in fine black ink. Let them talk, then let them see. My name is Melissa, and this was just the beginning. Subscribe to hear what happened next. The restaurant was chosen for the view. A rooftop that overlooked the harbor, wrapped in lavender twilight and soft jazz. White linens draped every table. Lavender napkins folded like invitations that had forgotten who they belonged to. Candles flickered in tall glass cages, glowing like they knew they weren't meant to last. I arrived 5 minutes late. Not out of revenge, just late enough to be noticed. Heads turned. Eyes followed. My mother smiled as if nothing had happened. Sabrina blinked like she couldn't believe I actually showed up. I wore black. A sleek black dress with a high neckline and long sleeves that kissed my wrists. Soft waves. Pearl earrings. Subtle. Deliberate. Elegance wasn't what I wore. It was how I walked into the room, untouched by the fire they thought had burned me. Melissa, my mother called. We didn't know if you were coming. I kissed Oliver on the forehead and met her gaze with a calm that cut deeper than anger. You invited me, I said. Didn't you? She blinked once, caught off guard. Of course. I just meant after the mix-up. There was no mix-up, I replied, and slid into my seat without waiting for permission. Sabrina turned to the server with a bright, brittle smile. We already ordered Pinot. Hope that's okay. Perfect, I said, without looking at her. But I didn't come to drink. The conversation was light in the way that people who are hiding things tend to be. They laughed too hard, spoke too quickly, avoided my eyes. Sabrina was all glitter and storytelling, narrating the Amalfi trip like she'd earned it through grief or grace. She made sure to mention the view from the balcony, the salt air, the chef who just got her. My mother nodded and clapped politely, eyes gleaming like someone watching their own reflection instead of their daughter. Oliver sat beside me, quietly sketching on a napkin with a green crayon. I leaned over. He'd drawn a table, one figure sitting alone. The others turned away. I folded the napkin and tucked it beneath my plate. How's work? Sabrina asked, slicing her steak into geometric precision. Work is good, I said. I'm raising a son, paying for a life I built, and still sleeping well at night. Her smile twitched. Mom jumped in to change the subject. Sabrina's starting her own consultancy. In what field? I asked gently. Sabrina's tone lifted. I'm still shaping the vision. It's more about alignment and emotional branding. Less what I do, more who I become while doing it. I nodded. Sounds powerful. Almost like a TED Talk that ends with the audience clapping because they don't understand a word of it. A few people chuckled nervously. Even laughter has ears. Sabrina's fork paused midair. Then Mom tapped her glass with a spoon. Before dessert, she said brightly, I just want to say something. The table quieted. Even the harbor seemed to hold its breath. This year taught me a lot about grace, about second chances, about the importance of family. She reached out, placing one hand on me, the other on Sabrina. I'm proud to have my daughters beside me, together. I let the silence stretch. Then I said, softly but clearly, "You gave away something that wasn't yours to give." Mom's smile faltered. "I gave a gift." "No," I said. "You made a choice." "And Sabrina." "She didn't ask," Mom interrupted. "Exactly," I replied. "She didn't have to." The words dropped into the silence like glass. Nobody moved. "You told me that family means sacrifice," I said. "Then you sacrificed me." Sabrina's voice came small. "It wasn't meant to hurt you." "That's the problem," I said. "It never is." Then, just as the air began to chill, Mom's tone turned bright again. "Well," she said, lifting her glass, "we do have something to celebrate tonight." Sabrina lowered her eyes, modest and gleaming. "I'm engaged." Gasps fluttered like applause. I stayed still. Then Sabrina looked at me. "You actually know him, Melissa?" And she said his name. Daniel. The sound hit my chest like a memory I hadn't invited. The last time I saw him, we were 24. My friend's backyard. Flickering porch light. A plate of half-eaten potato salad balanced on my knee. Everyone else had left. It was just us and the quiet hum of what could have been. We talked about grad school, music, future cities. He poured cheap wine into paper cups and told me I made him feel seen. He leaned in, stopped halfway, and whispered, "I think this would get complicated." I smiled like it didn't matter. Like I hadn't already started imagining him in every chapter that came next. He left for Boston a week later. Promised he'd be back by fall. He never came. I wrote him 3 letters. Not desperate. Just honest. He never replied. By the time snow came, I stopped checking the mailbox. By spring, I had met my ex-husband. And Daniel Weston? He became a story I told myself less and less. Until tonight. Sabrina sipped her wine. Her eyes sparkled like she'd just played the winning card. We ran into each other at a fundraiser. Last year. It just clicked. Of course it did. Sabrina always knew how to make a man feel like the sun came up just to see him smile. "That's nice," I said, carefully slicing into my salmon. All that clicking. Someone at the table laughed. They weren't sure if they were supposed to. I stood up. Calm. Steady. "Excuse me," I said. I walked toward the terrace. The hallway was lined with paintings too expensive to matter. Candles flickered in tall holders, casting soft shadows on polished marble. And I felt it. His eyes. Daniel. Watching me from across the room. Still. Quiet. Like he was seeing something he didn't expect to see again. I didn't turn. But when the terrace door opened behind me, I already knew. "Melissa," he said. That voice. Older now. But still the same undercurrent. Warm. Familiar, unfinished. I turned slowly. He stood there, framed in candlelight and memories. His suit slightly rumpled, like he didn't care about impressing anyone. Hair a little longer. Beard dusted with time. But the eyes. Still asking questions they were too afraid to voice. He let out a breath. "I wasn't expecting. Yeah," I said, my voice like velvet wrapped around steel. "You and me both." He stepped closer. Not fast. Not eager. Carefully. Like the space between us still mattered. "I didn't know you and Sabrina were sisters," I said. "It's not something she advertises." He blinked. "She never mentioned you." Of course she didn't. Because in Sabrina's world, I was the footnote. I said nothing. Let the silence stretch. Let it speak. "You okay?" he asked softly. I turned toward the ocean. The waves crashed like they meant it. Raw and unapologetic. "I'm fine," I said. "You seem..." He paused. "Searching." "Different." "Older." I offered. He smiled. "No." "Clearer." The wind picked up. A strand of hair flew across my cheek. I tucked it behind my ear. "That night," he said, "I almost called you." "Almost," I replied, "is a convenient alibi." He stepped forward again. "I wanted to. I just didn't know if I deserved you." I met his gaze. "You're marrying Sabrina," I said plainly. He nodded. No excuses. No defense. Just silence. The kind that knew it had no place to stand. Back inside, dessert had arrived. Golden ramekins of espresso custard glowed under candlelight. Sabrina was laughing too loudly now. Eyes glittering. Smile stretched tight. She didn't see us standing on the terrace. Didn't see the man who used to belong to a chapter she never read. And me? I didn't need revenge. I had something quieter. Stronger. I had memory. And sometimes, memory walks back in wearing a ring meant for someone else. Sabrina liked brunches that looked like Pinterest boards. Rose-shaped udder, mimosas in coupe glasses, pastel napkins folded like origami. This one was no different. A pre-wedding gathering labeled, intimates only, but packed with people she barely knew. I wore navy, sharp lines, minimal jewelry. A quiet statement, I don't have to shout. As I walked in, someone said, "Melissa, you came?" I smiled. Sabrina looked up from the center of the table, sunlit, radiant, curated. She blinked. "You look very polished." "Thank you," I said. I believe in dressing for clarity. A waiter approached with a small white box. He handed it to Sabrina. "It's from the front desk." Courier dropped it off. She opened it casually, expecting truffles, maybe a handwritten poem from Daniel. Instead, she pulled out a letter. Thick cream stock, embossed with my lawyer's name. She scanned it once, twice. And that's when her expression slipped. Just a hairline fracture. But I saw it. So did Daniel. He leaned in. "Everything okay?" Sabrina smiled too tightly. "Of course. Just wedding logistics." But her hand trembled as she set the envelope down. It wasn't the only letter. An identical one, equal in weight, equal in truth, was already waiting at home for my mother. Inside both envelopes was the truth, measured, legal, and undeniable. First, a certified notice of property rights. The house they lived in? It had always been mine. Bought 11 years ago. Every tax, every repair bill, paid by me. Loaned freely. Never once asked for rent. Then came the eviction notice. Sabrina had 30 days to leave. No extensions. No appeals. No apologies. And finally, grace. My mother wasn't being asked to leave. She was offered a private guest suite in my home. Should she choose to stay nearby? It wasn't punishment. It wasn't revenge. Just a line, finally drawn in ink. One that said, "This was always mine. Mom, you are always welcome." Sabrina never was. And tucked inside, a handwritten note, just for my mother. For years, I gave without asking. Now, I only ask that you honor the truth. Sabrina pressed the letter flat on the table, trying to appear unfazed. Her voice lifted too brightly. "Champagne, anyone?" But the air had shifted. So had Daniel's eyes. I stood, slow and silent, straightened my blazer, and without glancing her way, I nodded once to the room, turned on my heel, and walked out. Back at home, Oliver was playing cards on the floor when I returned. He looked up. "Did she like your gift?" I paused. "She got the message." He nodded, satisfied. "Good." Meanwhile, across town, my mother sat at her kitchen table. The letter lay open before her. She didn't cry. She didn't call. She folded the card I wrote and slid it into her drawer, right next to the memories she never wanted to talk about. It wasn't about getting even. It was realignment, a restoration of dignity. I'd stopped asking to be seen. Now I was the one who could shift the room, silently, precisely on my terms. Sabrina would still have her wedding, but she'd pack her boxes in a house that was never hers. She'd toast under fairy lights in a borrowed venue, because the woman she tried to erase just redrew the blueprint. The vineyard was everything Sabrina wanted people to see. Orchids strung from trellises, champagne flowing like a promise, sunlight falling like it had been filtered just for her. But I arrived like I belonged to a different story. Not one curated for photos. One written in spine and silence. My black satin gown caught the light with every step. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just deliberate. Elegant. Enough. Daniel saw me the moment I stepped out of the car. He didn't blink. It was like memory walked in wearing heels. And suddenly he remembered. The porch. The letters. The way I let him go, without making him feel the weight of it. At the aisle, Sabrina moved like lace and light, radiant, picture perfect. But when Daniel looked at her, he wasn't smiling. He was scanning the crowd, until his eyes landed on me, in second row. And for a moment, it felt like his heart left the altar, and came looking for what it had lost. During the vows, he said the words, but his voice cracked barely. I didn't flinch, didn't look away. And that landed harder than anything I could have said. Because I wasn't holding anger anymore. I was holding power. At the reception, Sabrina glowed. She always knew how. Meanwhile, Daniel sat silent. Half-finished champagne, eyes on me. He watched the way I leaned into Oliver. The way I laughed quietly. The way I existed. Like nothing was missing. And he knew. He'd chosen easy, but lost rare. As the sun dipped behind the hills, he walked toward my table. I stood before he could speak, but he spoke anyway. Voice low, careful. You look exactly like I remembered. I held his gaze. No smile, no softness. Then I said, that's the thing about remembering. It only works when you care enough not to forget. He opened his mouth, maybe to apologize, maybe to explain. But I was already done carrying what wasn't mine. So I added, calm and final. Don't. Then I turned and walked away. Not for power. Not for effect. Just because I had nothing left to prove. And Daniel Weston, the man who once said almost, stood in the middle of a wedding he no longer recognized, watching the woman he should have fought for walk away, without ever looking back. 2 days after the wedding, sunlight poured across my kitchen counter in soft, slanted beams. A citrus candle flickered. Oliver was at school. The house was still. And I was writing. Not a letter. Not a plea. A notice. Precise. Calm. And legally sound. My signature was clean. Because this time, I wasn't reacting. I was closing the loop. The house. That yellow, 2-story place with a cracked porch swing and mismatched shutters. The one my mother always called ours, but never paid a single tax on. Technically, legally, it was mine. I'd owned it since 2017. Back when Mom was drowning in medical debt and Sabrina was off finding herself on yoga retreats and dating apps. We'd just lost our father's house. No savings. No backup. Just survival. I was barely out of college. Working 2 jobs day and night. Stacking every dollar. Skipping birthdays. Swallowing pride. No vacations. No help. Just grit. And against all odds, I bought that house. Alone. That afternoon, a courier knocked on her door. The same door where I'd once left birthday cakes, forgiveness, and explanations she never really heard. She answered in a floral robe. The smell of jasmine in the air. Took the envelope. Closed the door. She sat at the table and opened it with one careful finger. Inside, 2 pages. The first, a notarized, 60-day notice to vacate the property. The second, handwritten. From me. Mom, you raised me to be strong. Maybe not intentionally, but you did. I've housed you, supported you, absorbed your silences. But I'm no longer a safety net you pretend doesn't exist. I'm reclaiming the space I paid for legally and emotionally. You have 60 days to find new arrangements. If you'd like, the guest room here is open to you. You're welcome. I won't chase you to accept kindness. But I won't let you treat my sacrifices like community property. Sabrina doesn't need the house. And I don't need to carry all of us anymore. Melissa. The ink didn't smudge. She didn't cry. She folded the letter once. And for the first time in years, she sat in silence and listened. That night, I lit a fire and curled up with a book. Outside, LA exhaled its warm July breath. I didn't check my phone. I didn't need to. Somewhere across town, Sabrina was arranging monogrammed towels in a rented apartment, planning a honeymoon meant to impress strangers. And my mother? She was walking room to room, through a house I built, touching furniture I paid for, opening drawers that held memories she never made, realizing she had run out of places to pretend. 2 days later, the doorbell rang. I opened it slowly, a glass of chilled water still in my hand. She stood there. No tears. No speech. Just a box of papers. I started packing, she said. I nodded. I'll take the guest room for now, she added, not meeting my eyes. I stepped aside. No warmth. No revenge. Just a door open wide enough for truth. The next weekend, I took Oliver to the bookstore. While he explored the graphic novels aisle, I stepped outside into the light. Across the street, I spotted Daniel. Alone. No smile. He saw me. Of course he did. He crossed halfway. Melissa. I didn't stop. Didn't wave. Didn't flinch. I turned, got in my car, and drove away. Because the most powerful kind of justice isn't loud. It's being untouchable. 3 months after Sabrina's wedding, the letter came. Not elegant. Not cream-colored. Just a cheap envelope, mailed from the city's east side, postmarked in haste. Inside, 2 handwritten pages. Sabrina's familiar loops and flourishes were smudged near the top, like she'd started the letter in confidence and finished it in frustration. I know you've washed your hands of me, it began, but you need to know the truth. She went on to describe how Daniel had changed, how he'd grown cold after the wedding, how the finances were more complicated than he let on, how he traveled too often, forgot anniversaries, left unpaid bills. He says he's under pressure, but I don't know what to believe anymore. I feel stupid. I thought you were just jealous. Maybe I was wrong. No request for help. Not directly. But beneath the ink, every line tugged at that old thread, the one she always used to reel me back in. This time, I didn't tug back. I folded the letter, slid it into a drawer beneath Oliver's old school crafts, and moved on. Daniel never reached out again. But sometimes I think about his face at the wedding, the way regret sat on him like dust that wouldn't lift. He looked at me like he was still trying to remember the shape of something he once held too lightly. And me? I had no use for ghosts. The house. The house was listed for rent the following week. 3 bedrooms. 2 baths. Fully updated. Mature garden. I worked through a property manager. I never stepped inside again. Sabrina and my mother had 30 days to vacate. On the 7th day, my mother called. Her voice was tight, formal. I assume you're serious about this. I am, I said, gently, but without softness. You're really taking it away? This house is all I have. I paused. It was always mine. You just got used to me not asking for it. Silence. Then a sigh. And finally, something real. I resented you, you know, for being like your father. I said nothing. You were so unshakable. So certain. I couldn't control you. Sabrina?
She needed me.
She was messy. She was mine. A pause. But you. Her voice broke. You reminded me of everything I wish I'd become. I closed my eyes. I forgive you, I said. Will you let me stay? That was the question. And I, older now, clearer, didn't dodge it. I'm offering you something else. If you ever need a place, there's a room in my home. But this one, it needs to earn. She didn't reply, but she didn't beg either. Somewhere in the silence, there was understanding. By winter, the house was rented to a young family from out of state. I watched the lease go through with the same stillness I'd held during depositions. Another income stream. Another layer of independence. Over dinner one night, Oliver looked up from his roasted carrots and asked, "Does it feel weird that they live there now?" I smiled.
No.
It feels right. Then came the promotion. 2 weeks later, it arrived. Lead attorney. Full benefits. Bigger office. My name etched on the glass. The same partner who once forgot I was in the room now held the door open with a congratulatory nod. I didn't cry. I just sat in my new chair, rolled it back, and breathed. Not for applause. Just for air. Spring arrived with jasmine in the air and second chances tucked between paper napkins. It was a cousin's engagement party. String lights hung above the lawn. Folding chairs lined the grass, and paper plates were topped with catered joy. I arrived in a tailored navy dress, my hair swept up in a clean, elegant twist. Even before I reached the lawn, heads turned. My mother stood off to the side, holding lemonade, watching me like someone afraid they'd lost something irreplaceable. Sabrina was there too, quieter, her makeup perfect, smile practiced. She didn't meet my eyes.
Good.
I helped myself to a plate and sat under a sycamore. I didn't make a speech. I didn't have to. My cousins came to me now, asked for advice, sat straighter. Halfway through the evening, my mother approached. "I like your hair," she said awkwardly. "Thank you," I nodded. We didn't talk about the house, or Daniel, or the wedding, or the years we lost trying to reshape each other into softness. But finally, she said, "You were always stronger than me." I didn't flinch. "Maybe," I said. Then I handed her a slice of cake. As the sun dipped behind the trees, Oliver climbed onto the bench beside me and whispered, "You're like the boss of this whole thing." I laughed, ruffling his hair. "No," I said. "I'm just the one who stayed standing. And sometimes, that's more than enough." Subscribe for more unforgettable stories of quiet power, betrayal, healing, and the long, beautiful road to becoming unshakable.